The light is a little too bright.
Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome to Trial Review Tuesday. It is Tuesday, let's see, April 25th, and we are going to take a look at some of your videos from trials and go through them with video analysis and see what we can see. So I'm just going to wait here a minute and make sure that we get some people letting me know that they can see and hear everything. Ideally, I'd like to hear from somebody on Facebook and somebody on YouTube so that I know that both places are working. So give us a comment. We've got myself, Sarah Estevan, and Jennifer Crank in Ohio. And we are ready to take a look at some of these. We got lots of emails with lots of trial videos. All right, we've got some loud and clear and we are here messages. And we're going to take a look at a couple of these. And even if we don't get to yours, I think it's always instructive to see how coaches like the three of us, how we view videos, like what are the things that we're looking for, even kind of how we use the tools. It can be really helpful to people because these are things where sometimes you need a coach to look at your videos to know what wrong, but sometimes you just need to review it. Like if you looked at your own video, you might be able to tell, you know, why a particular mistake was made if you are kind of looking for the right things. All right, so now we have like a ton of comments of people saying that everything looks good and that y'all can see us and hear us and y'all are ready to get going. So let me take a moment here. We've each picked out a run to look at, and the first run that we're going to look at will be one that I'm going to look at, and it is a novice course. And just so y'all know, we have a novice course. We also have a ISC course that we're going to be looking at. So we kind of have like breadth of the different levels here. So I'm going to, let's see. Have to remember how I'm doing this. Oh, okay. So now you should be seeing not our faces and just this video. And so we're going to take a look, and this is a video from, let me get this. This is a video from Emily. And this is a novice jumpers with weave course with her dog Nightmare. By the way, I think that's a fantastic name for a dog. Nightmare. So one thing that I wanted to point out right away, and as coaches, we always notice this, is that Emily has a really nice lead out. So she's like, just from her body language alone, she looks really confident leading out. Her dog holds that. There's a little bit of jumpiness there, but he is holding it. So you can see that he's ready to go. But I like that she's able to get a nice long lead out, and it's something that she's going to need with this dog because this is a very fast, drivey dog jumping at a high jump height. And so we see this. Okay, hold on. My scroller is not working very well. There we go. We see that right away he's catching up with her. We have kind of a gentle first few jumps. The things that we want to look at are coming up a little bit later in the course. 6 weave pulls, and you can see that he is well ahead of her. Big arm here, and so this is kind of a bit of a send move. And in general, I think that's fine with a sharp direction change. But what we're going to see is in this particular case, there might have been a better option handling wise. So let me just show you what happens. Basically, this is a high jump. And from this angle that he's coming from, he's going to slice this jump and really land out over here somewhere. And there's not that much space between him and this next jump. So he's actually on a line where he could easily go around the jump and maybe even target it as a backside jump. So we have a couple of different options here. And what we'll see that she does is once she sees how wide he's going, she's going to throw up this kind of threadle arm here. And given where he is now, that's totally appropriate because he is headed for the backside. So we are kind of treating this as a threadle. My only main issue with this is that she's doing it reactively. So sees the dog going wide and is doing it reactively rather than recognizing during walkthrough the possibility that her dog is going to go real wide here. So I think that either I would want her to already be doing the threadle here because she recognizes that the dog is headed for the plane of the jump. And so she needs this to be a threadle to alter the line, in which case she should already be doing it. Or we can, if we look, let's just play it out. I want to show you where she goes from here, because now she gets the dog going in front of her and she's going to rear cross. Since she's going to rear cross anyway, then I think what might have been helpful is instead of doing this send out to this jump, that she could have gone up here and put a strong decel on approach to the jump. And what I'd love to see this dog do is take this jump as a wrap. So a lot of times when we see wraps, we think of wraps being like this, right? The dog comes at the jump square and wraps. The dog comes at the jump square and wraps. But we also need to train our dogs to come at jumps this way and wrap. And that's the kind of wrap that we see here. We want to prepare our dog to wrap this wing headed back towards the handler, and that's going to give you a better line here at pink and set up a better rear cross so that we're not quite so ping-pong in through here. If we go like this, now we set the line and then put pressure on the dog to rear cross. So that's kind of the first wide turn there and some thoughts of how we might do that different. Then as we play this out, we have this pinwheel and she's fallen behind because of the rear cross. I think that's okay, but notice here, I do think that the dog has a little bit of hesitation on commitment on turning this way versus this way. Because of the slicey nature, the dog thinks about turning the wrong way. And that limits what the handler can do, because if she has motion in this direction, it is very possible that the dog would turn away. So she's a little bit stuck back here. So then what she does here, once she gets her dog, is she does a front cross between these two jumps, this jump and this jump. But she gets a little bit stuck, both in the fact that she doesn't move and also in her position. If we look at where she wants to go, which is this jump over here, this wing is in her way. So she actually has to go this way before she can go this way. And so the dog is essentially going to mimic that movement. See, her shoulders are faced this way. The dog is also going to face this way, and the dog misses this jump here. So if we're going to be out here for this front cross, we have to go so that we can be driving at this wing as the dog is getting ready to take this jump. Anytime you're on the outside of the curve, which is what we are here, you have to lead the dog. You can't fall behind, because if you fall behind, the dog is going to then curve back towards you. So I think that's the problem here. This was the part that she had asked about in the email. And then I think the other option is if you can just be on the inside here, that would just be better, because then you can rear cross here and you don't have to worry about this front cross on the outside of the curve. And I think the only way to make that happen would be to have kind of cleaned up everything that happened before. So by the time we got there, we were a little bit stuck. But if we had been able to potentially put a blind cross in here, or be a little bit closer to the dog here so that we can get in here, then maybe we can just stay on the inside path here. So those are the thoughts there on how we can clean that up. And then at the ending, we just have a final rear cross that she does here on the landing side. And I think that's okay. There's not a lot of space here. To me, this is, you could kind of do it either way, and you have to know your dog. You could either get the dog set here and rear cross here to get the turn. And you just have to know, like, is your dog going to carry out to this, or would they turn too tight if you put the rear cross there? So deciding whether you put the rear cross here or put the rear cross here is very much kind of dog and handler dependent. All right, so those are the thoughts that I have there on that run for this novice run. And then next, we are going to look at an ISC run. Oh, wait, first we have questions. Oh, and I think this is the handler. She wondered if she should have been on the inside of the line. She was worried he wouldn't send out to the jump after the weaves, and then she just got stuck. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you could have gotten to the inside of the line, I think for the ending that would have been way better. It would have put you on the inside of the loop, and then you just do a final rear cross, and everything works out. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, so the next run that we have is a ISC run. So we're going to jump from novice to ISC. And because of the technology here, Jen has pre-recorded this, but then we can bring up the run if y'all have any questions about it. So is there anything you want to say before I just play the video, Jen?
Yeah, just two things. One that I just thought was a funny note, that I did talk a little bit about the start line stay at the beginning of the run in the same way that you did. So as you were talking, I was like, oh, just goes to show our consistency in teaching, because I talked about how solid this Bridget start line stay was as well, and how I knew it was solid. So I just thought that was kind of a funny tidbit. But the only other thing I wanted to mention is I did do this analysis and I did do this feedback knowing that I was presenting to everyone. So for those of you who might be VIPers or work with me, like kind of for more private coaching, it's a little bit of a different style because I'm teaching to everyone versus teaching to just that handler. So if you notice a different style in my teaching, I just wanted you to know why that was, is I was directing the information to everybody, not just Bridget herself. So that's all. You can go ahead and hit play. It is kind of long. Sorry, guys. The teacher and me just kind of took over.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add that in, and it'll immediately start playing. So here we go.
We're going to take a look at Bridget's J3 run with Domino. Now, for those of you that are not real familiar with ISC, it is a division of AKC that has gained in a lot of popularity over the last couple of years as it mimics more of the FCI rules and FCI course design. So it does have 3 levels, level 1, 2, 3, 3 being the most difficult. And then we have agility, which is often shortened as A. So A1, A2, A3. And then we have jumping, J1 being the lower level, J2, and then J3. So what we're seeing here is a jumper's course that's presented at that higher level. So when we look at this course, I really want to look at it from 2 different aspects. I want to take a look at strategy. So what decisions Bridget is making, why she might be making them. Is there a different strategy that might be better for them as a team? But also execution. Given the skill that she chose to execute, was it done well? Was it done timely? Did it have good mechanics? Sometimes the mistake or the error on the course might have been that the handler didn't choose the best strategy. Other times it can be that the strategy was good, but the execution wasn't quite there. So when Bridget sent this run in, there was question on the off-course tunnel. So we're going to take a look at that as well as a few other things here too. So coming off of the start line, what we're going to see is a really nice start line in the sense that I did not see Domino releasing on anything other than a verbal. She starts with a walk. She goes to a jog. All of this, he's looking nice and solid. Even when the speed is increased, he does not break. Arm goes up. We don't see a break. And then we see that release on the verbal. So this is a good sign for a real solid start line stay. Things that I'm going to keep an eye on is a handler who walks out really slow, maybe concerned that the dog is going to break, or a dog who releases when the arm goes up or when the speed changes, not necessarily with the verbal. So the start line is looking good. Now we're going to go right into this front cross here after number 2. And we're going to take a look at a couple things on this front cross. One of the things that I want to start with is the timing of the front cross. We're also going to look at the mechanics of the front cross and also the location. So all 3 of these are elements that I'm going to look at. So when we look at timing, it's important that that turn is cued prior to the point of commitment. So for a large dog like this, we're talking anywhere from like a third to halfway between these 2 obstacles. So I'm going to say right here, we are approaching mental commitment. So we want to indicate that that turn is happening. So you can see right here, we are going to see step 1 of this front cross. So a good front cross is going to happen through 4 steps. It's going to start with the inside leg, finish with the inside leg. All right, so there's step 1. There's step 2, and Domino has not yet taken off. We also see that shoulder rotation and outside arm. So timing-wise, these are all indications to say, hey, we are making a turn. You need to prepare for a turn. You can actually see in this body mechanics, Domino kind of getting his rear underneath of him to prepare for the turn. But what we're going to see next is several shuffling backward steps before we get to that step 3, step 4. So instead of planting 1, 2, 3, 4, we see 1, 2, and then watch here, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle before 3 is happening right there. Okay, so 3 is happening long after dominoes landed, and then opening up and setting the line there on number 4. So it starts off really good, and then we want to try to clean up the mechanics, and instead of all that jogging in place and running in place, open up through that front cross so that by the time domino lands, we see shoulders rotating in the direction of that next jump. And as a handler, you can kind of get out of there and head downstream. Now, we're also going to look at location. Location looks pretty good here when we think about quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. We're going to draw this line here. And then from this jump over to here, you can see she's gone just a little bit past that, rotating through. All right, so location looks good there. All right, and then it's just the mechanics really that become the biggest issue. So timing was good, location was good, mechanics we want to try to clean up. All right, so once we rotate through on this front cross, we're going to see dog on right up this line. All right, now one thing that we could look at that might help keep Bridget a little further ahead, you can see already obstacle number 4, Bridget's falling behind, is rather than all the effort and all the work that had to happen on this front cross, one option we could have looked at is a lead out push. It's kind of rotating through here. If we think about what's happening on the second half of that front cross, rotating towards the dog, trying to get body facing this way, could have just led out to a lead out push. Now you've cued the turn, all right, all the way back before the release, comes off that start line, that turn is cued, and then mechanically that's going to be easier. So you'd almost set out in this positioning before you even release off the start line. I think in a lot of times it makes it easier for the handler because you're not rotating through the front cross. It gives earlier information to the dog. All right. And then in this case, I think getting caught up on the footwork here then caused a little delay in getting deep on 3 and then falling behind on this. So that would have been an option. So strategically, I would have elected for a lead out push there. That doesn't make it the better option. It just makes it an option worth considering that I think would have been easier and provided as much, if not more information. So we do see big distances. Look at these big distances from jump to tunnel. That's more than what we normally see on an AKC course. And then when we come through here, here's going to be the first mistake. Now, I'm not scrolling forward to tell you what the mistake is because I'm going to pause this and say, okay, tell me what the dog is to do at this point. And when I first watched it, it was really hard for me to know at this exact moment what was going to happen. With this shoulder rotation, with that outside arm, we clearly want the dog to come in. But my outside arm also is my cue for a tunnel threadle. So I actually thought that what was happening here was a threadle into this end of the tunnel. And then it turns out that that was not the case because right here, I could see the recovery when Domino went for the tunnel. No, that's not what we want. So I think we have a couple factors on this. This was the first off course here, the first tunnel off course that was talked about. I think we have a couple factors. One was the really extreme shoulder rotation in an outside arm that looked very similar to what would be happening for the tunnel. The other thing is there is just an element of dog training. When you're talking about courses at this level, the A3, the J3 courses, there's only so much that handling can do. At some point, it comes down to just kind of the dog training, the skill. And here we're talking about a weave tunnel discrimination. So there is a big part of it that is just when I say weave, will my dog discriminate between the tunnel and the weave? So I think you kind of have both factors there. Maybe a little less rotation. All right, moving in towards the weave pole sooner, and then also the training element. Now, strategically, you could also look at getting a front cross in on the landing of the yellow wing. So if we go back here a bit, all the way here. Okay, so send dog into tunnel, cut lateral, come into a front cross. All right, be over here and rotate through, and now dog comes in on handler's left. That would have been an option. I'm not sure that that's going to gain you any potential discrimination between the weaves and the tunnel. It's just going to put the dog on the correct lead and eliminate the need for the rear cross into the weave poles, which then eliminates the need for the outside arm. So again, the issue here was it looked so similar to what I would expect to see going into the tunnel. Now, on this next section, again, we see big distances. And with that, we often see the desire or kind of the judge intending for some layering. I fully think that the layer here is what the judge probably suspected, and I think I would have done in order to help get downstream. Okay, so coming down here, we could have layered that jump, been able to get a little bit further ahead. You can see kind of falling behind at this point, which means on tunnel, all right, you really had to work to get to this end of the tunnel. So one of the other things about ISC is that there is not the same restrictions that AKC has on tunnel passes. So in AKC, you're only allowed to do 2 tunnel passes unless the third one is a short, straight 10-foot tunnel. That is not a thing in ISC. So you'll actually see we have blue tunnel, over to yellow tunnel, over to orange tunnel, and it's easy on those tunnels to fall behind because the dog's on a flat surface and you're kind of in a foot race. So we see the tunnel discrimination here. I would have been inclined to use the outside arm, but clearly Domino knew exactly what end of the tunnel to go to. And then here's where we're going to come into our next fault. Now, this part was tricky because as we just kind of talked about with the layering and the distance, right where Bridget wants to be, we see the placement of this jump. Okay, so coming around here. All right, we don't actually want this jump, but you're going to see Domino look. All right, so I'm going to kind of play through. You can see right here at takeoff, there's no indication of a turn happening, right? Forward motion, you can actually see Domino's eye contact going forward, headed out to this jump, and then nearly taking out the wing. You were able to pull him in. He did not go to that jump, pulled past it, but now you're still behind. So now we have 0 indication of any turn happening at the yellow, which is going to lead to our second fault. All right, so right here, nothing is saying turn. I'm thinking about this as those of you watching this, those viewers on the computer screen that do not know what the next obstacle is. What are you thinking at this moment right here when the dog takes off? What are you prepared for? And I can tell you what I'm not prepared for is I'm not prepared for that jump. We see inside arm. We see forward motion. We see shoulders forward. Domino says, got it. And then boom, outside arm comes up. He goes, what? You mean we're turning? I didn't know we were turning. I thought we were going to that tunnel. So you can just see coming around here, not enough turning cues. I also do think that this white line on the ground played a role in the bar. I do think probably was just happening because he didn't know where to go. But even when you watch his arc, even if he was going to the tunnel, he's taking off so far back, almost with the visual of that being a ground bar. And then you can see that hyperextension, that front going way up, that rear not getting extended back. That was the moment when he realized, uh-oh, not going to clear this. And sure enough, was already descending. That's where we get that off-course tunnel. Okay, so strategically, if you knew you were going to be that far behind, the front cross wasn't a great choice. I think on paper, the front cross is a good choice, but we need to be further ahead. And that's where, again, the layering here might have come into play. All right, so possible option there, not to get so stuck behind this jump, because I did feel like the off-course tunnel was a very reasonable off-course given the timing of that front cross. So you did get the shoulder rotation and the outside arm up. The timing was just a bit problematic. A lot of times with front crosses, I say we look at the what, when, and where. All right, when being the timing, where being the location, what being the mechanics. All right, you got that shoulder rotation, you got the mechanics, but we just saw the timing of that being a problem. Here on this last bar, I do not see any handling being a problem, but once again, we see this white line on the turf. So watch what happens. All right, Domino once again kind of treating it like a ground bar, getting hyperextended. You can see those front feet coming up above the nose, realizing, oh crap, that's not right, and then hitting that bar. So it's hard to say whether the jumping is a problem that you need to address. Maybe the white lines on the ground was just total coincidence. But to me, the fact that those 2 bars came down when that white line looked like a ground bar might have been a bit more than just kind of accidental. I think there was probably some visual there that was affecting him as well. So a little bit to look at on execution, little bit to look at on strategy. Some of this can be fixed with handling. Some of this is going to have to be fixed with some long-term dog training, like the discrimination between the weaves and the tunnel. But all in all, a really nice run, especially considering the difficulty of J3. So lots of good stuff to look at as well.
All right. So if y'all have any questions about that, you can put them up right now. We got this comment during it. Said it was fascinating for a newbie to agility to hear all of that. Yeah, then we have one more to go.
Yeah, no, Jen, I would just want to say that I really like the mention of the line there. The first time I saw that, I think, was at the year they held tryouts in California in that little soccer arena, and there were all these striped lines, and I saw a Sheltie like hop over it, and then like one stride later have to go and actually take the jump. They kept hopping over it, but by the second or third round, I think they had worked it out. But I saw several dogs like adjust their striding based on it, and I'm not clear if they like use it, like you were saying, as like a set point kind of exercise, or they view it as the bar itself and they try and get their apex like right over the stride. So
yeah, there's a lot of funny visuals that sometimes we don't always know about. But I think people that train on turf like that a lot, the dogs get used to it and
they
learn
do, yeah.
to focus. But like my turf has no lines on it at all. So
Mm,
I find it, even watching it, I find it a little bit distracting to
yeah,
look at. So, and it's kind of like the dogs that do the ascending spreads and the double bar jumps.
yeah,
That's been happening a fair amount recently
yeah.
because we don't tend to train with jumps with 2 bars, even
Mm,
though they see it at trials, because visually it looks like the ascending spreads that we have in ISC. So there's like a
mhm.
whole visual going on with that. And I have the decision of deciding kind of what to do there. So there's a lot. It could have been coincidence, but it was just worth noting that on both of those jumps that came down, there was that line on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right. All right. Next jump here. Sorry, not next jump, next run here. I'm going to go ahead and put up onto the screen, full screen here. And let me remind myself who this is. All right. So this is Heather.
Oh wait, here we have a comment from the
Oh,
handler.
okay. Yes. Okay. Got it. Yep.
Oh,
So,
okay. Yeah,
yep.
I see. Jen's muted. Okay, yeah. So she says that she's worried about the broad is off course, didn't handle the weaves as well as she could have. Never thought about the lines being an issue as it's not a place we go off.
And it, even if you had, like, there is nothing you can do, like, in the moment. Like, if you
Yeah.
suspected that it might be an issue, there wouldn't have been anything that you would do differently. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I guess it's my turn, and I'll say that we get a lot of requests for feedbacks from people, and there's a lot of different kinds of requests. So someone might have been at a competition where they got second place or some place compared to the winner, and they're like, hey, compare me to the winner. Like, where could I have found half a second to maybe win this thing, right? But most of the time it's very and there you would obviously use a side-by-side approach, but here we're not using any side-by-sides in particular today. We're looking at more of a problem-based approach, right? And so a problem might be like, I'll get 3 or 4 runs and they'll be like, okay, on 2 of these rear crosses my dog turned away from me, and here are 4 runs where we did a lot of rear crosses. Can you figure out, tell me what I'm doing wrong, tell me what's going on. If a dog consistently has off courses, right? They may be like, why did my dog go off course here on this particular run? And the other one, oh, I think we lost it there. The other one is what Jen did, which I think is so great, which is bars. Because in the moment, all bars kind of look the same, right? You're in the middle of a run, you don't really know what happened. I know when I was running my dog, like I almost never saw the bar, right? Sometimes I would finish runs, think that I had run clean, only to discover that someone says, oh, too bad about that bar, and I didn't even see it fall. So that's where video review I think is really, really good, and you'll see that not all bars are caused by the same thing, right? Sometimes your dog brushes the upright and they don't hit the bars. Sometimes they knock it with their chest, which is a different problem than knocking it with their rear foot. Dogs with tails that tend to tuck them when they jump will occasionally knock bars with their tails. So I just think that's a really basically just saying, looking at your videos in slow motion is a pretty useful thing. All right, here we have this handler, and looks like this is a master's jumpers course. And so I'm going to take a problem-based approach, and we're going to take a look at where we are going to have issues. She opens here on a loop and then throttle into the tunnel here. Everything seems to be going well. One of the things I check with people, especially if I'm looking at their video for the first time, is their front cross footwork. So Jen went into that a little bit. And so let me just play this here. This is in slow motion. Here's her front cross. Okay, so given what Jen had said earlier in her review, what does everybody think about this front cross, right? So if you think this front cross was good, the footwork, type good in the comments, right? If you don't know, then don't type anything. And I'm gonna see how many goods we get, because I actually think this front cross is quite good. This is probably the first step here. It's always the plant step where the handler starts to rotate toward the dog. So the left foot here, this is gonna be step 1. Step 2 is going to be obviously the right leg. That's step 2. Step 2 should usually end up with you facing the dog. Step 3, you're now opening up. And step 4, I like to call the power step. It's the right foot coming forward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, beautiful, perfect 4-step front cross here. So excellent. And I think when we do these analyses, I think Jennifer and Sarah are very good about this, is identifying places where you are doing really, really well, right? Or your dog has a really phenomenal response. So you know to do it, because sometimes people do things and they're not aware that they did them, or they come up with a solution and they don't really think about it. And then when they run into that situation again, they don't think to do what was successful for them before. Right? So we want to point out what's good, just like we do for our dogs. We want to positively reinforce what is working. Okay, now we get to an interesting spot here. I believe this is the spot here. Yeah, okay. So the dog is approaching a jump over here. We kind of don't know what's out there. And I'm going to run through here. The handler kind of sends the dog a little bit. There is a direction change here. So everyone should know at this point that there's a turn, right? We all know it. The dog knows it. The dog knows that they're turning left, okay? The question for the dog becomes, what degree of turn? Let's take a look at the dog's line. I'm just going to put a line right through kind of their direction. That's where the dog is headed, right? Now I'm going to scroll forward just a little bit. And now the dog is landing, but even if we bend that line a little bit, you can see that there are multiple options here, right? So option number 1, the dog can turn and still hit that tunnel, right? Unlikely, given the position and motion of the handler here. Option number 2, right? The dog could maybe back jump this triple. Option number 3, the dog could maybe go for the weaves. Maybe this is a handler who puts in quite a bit of distance work. Jen mentioned layering on international coursework, right? So you have these very experienced dogs who are used to layering in certain situations, and the dog may look at this and say, hey, I'm headed for the weave pulls, right? So that's the 3rd option already. Maybe we have this 4th option here, this jump that's kind of by the handler, although the handler looks like they're kind of blowing past it. So what does everybody think here? Let me turn this into a line, and I'm going to make it yellow. Make it yellow with our tool here. So number 1 is the tunnel. Number 2 is the weaves. Number 3 is this triple. Hopefully no one picks the triple. And number 4 is the jump buyer. What is the obstacle that the dog should take here? Go ahead and put your number in the chat. And I'm going to pause here for a few seconds and let people get their numbers in before I play the tape. Right? So
the humans think 4.
Yeah, so as humans, right, we understand the intent of the handler, right? But in the moment, maybe the dog does not. So as we scroll through here, we can see the dog back jump the triple. But hopefully what I was able to show you is in the moment, the kind of decision making that we're asking of our dogs, right? So what I like to do right before things go wrong. So this is the jump that they do correctly, and then the next thing goes wrong. I stop it, I freeze it at the takeoff point. And this is what I want all of you to do. You can do it right now. You don't even have to have your instructor or your friend do it. You can do it for yourself. Stop as the front feet are in the air here, right? Zoom in here, back feet are on the ground, and then look at what you're doing, right? Look at the motion that you have, which way you're running, which way you're facing, right? Are you slowing down? Are you speeding up? Are you turning? What's going on? And ask yourself, have I clearly indicated the next obstacle, right? And so you saw Jennifer doing that as well. Freeze it at the takeoff. What should the dog do next, right? And that's what this dog has to figure out. And that, I think, is where this goes wrong. So as far as solutions here, I think the one that I like is using a strong deceleration cue. And so for that, a concept that I'm going to introduce to some of you, because I understand there are some novices listening out here, is that even though this handler is indeed turning, right, we have loss of degree of control. And once the handler starts adding back the motion, right, the dog is kind of free to choose any of these turns and also start to parallel that line, right? So let me draw this line. So the handler line is this way. And we say, okay, the dog's going to land over here somewhere. What is that dog's parallel line going to look like? It's going to look like this. Now, you and I know we need the dog to come back like this. So that means the handler needs to look like that, right? For these two lines to parallel. Do you see how these lines are parallel? And it's a very different from these two lines. So what I would like the handler to do, they can stop here. They don't need to go deeper. But basically, they need to come up and they need to go back this way. I don't want them to come here and then go like this, right? So there's two different lines. So this and this versus coming in and then moving across the face of this jump. So basically, I'm going to use a strong decel cue. I'm going to stop here. For myself, I generally will face the direction that the dog is headed. Ooh, got the arrow there. So I'm going to stay facing this way until I get the dog's head looking at this jump, right? Then I can go. So I'm just going to stay very, very patient. So the issue here is controlling the degree of turn right here. And in the face of all these different options, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I want basically the last option, the tightest option. I need some kind of strong deceleration cue. I think it's also reasonable. You'll see people use turning into the dog. Basically, your spin maneuvers here.
Okay, but before you go on, let me ask you one question.
Yep.
So this person in the email said that they originally planned to do a front cross, but they were talked out of it. So why don't you talk about what you anticipate would have happened if she had tried to go do a front cross? I assume between the jump that the dog's taking now and the next jump.
That's the first question, right?
Oh, that is
so
yeah.
Yeah. So what was she getting talked out of, right? So if her plan was to come in here and then do a front cross, right? That's good. I think the dog is still probably going to go a little bit wide because by the time you're able to get there with such a fast dog, the dog will have gone in the wrong direction a little bit, but you're probably going to save this off course, right? Especially if she does another great footwork front cross. So I think that is reasonable, but the other front cross to do would be to come across here depending on what's next, right? So we need to run it a little bit. So here, here, and here. Okay, so now we know the dog was supposed to come this way, right? So then what would I do? So then I think coming in here for this handler would be to come in maybe a little bit more, throw on the brakes, wait until you get a really tight turn here, and then once you get the dog's head, then you can move in here. And then I'm front crossing, generally not creating motion, what I call front crossing across the face of a jump. A lot of handlers do that, but I'm looking at this diagonal line. So if I'm going to front cross between this obstacle and this obstacle here, I kind of do it by the wings. I know a turn is coming here. They're turning here. I want them kind of close to this wing, close to that wing. Okay, so here's my diagonal line. I generally want to come across and front cross anywhere on this yellow line, but closer to here rather than executing the front cross here. Because coming across the face like this, the dog's just going to parallel me and go wide. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do. Given that the dog goes wide, I think you can come in here for a front cross, but you'll get a wide turn, right?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to point out about putting the front cross out here is that it works great for this jump, and this jump, but it does not work great for now getting to blue. It's a little bit like that novice course in that if you come in here for a front, the dog is going to want to drift back towards you.
So only if you're staying far behind.
Right.
Right. So if you can come in here and then you move across the face and then you really hustle to get down the line, I think you can be far enough to straighten out this line.
Yeah.
Right. But I agree with you. In general, I would not put the front cross there, but mostly because I want to really tighten the turn right here. Right. Yeah. Okay. So I think those were the
main
two spots
points
here.
there, yep.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. So then here, we run into another issue, which I fear I've given the answer away. And the question is, what obstacle is next, right? And so I think all of us can agree it's probably this jump here, right? If we take a look at the dog's line, the dog's taking off this way. The handler is clearly turning and slowing down, probably giving a turning cue like saying come or calling the dog's name. And so the dog is going to respond by turning off that line. And here I introduced the concept, the line to infinity. So you'll hear in my feedbacks, I'll say, what's the line to infinity? The line to infinity is to this air conditioning unit or to this post. That's where the dog's going to go if we just have them go straight. Here we're having them turn off that line. And the first obstacle they see when they turn off that line is the correct jump. Except it's not the correct jump, right? So the dog takes the jump and the handler stops. So this is my first clue that the dog has not done the correct obstacle, right? So I think this is a good way to introduce this idea that if the dog's on a line this way and we say come, and the first obstacle is the wrong thing, right? Then we need something else. A simple turning cue is not going to get the job done when there's two choices. Because in the dog's mind, they responded to the cue properly. You said come, you turned away, they're coming, okay? And they're going to take the first obvious thing. And so if there is a choice, you need to be able to discriminate between the two, whether it's verbal or you do something else, a different handling maneuver perhaps. We'll need to see what obstacle is next to figure out what a good solution might be. An easy one would be to do the same thing that I was recommending before, which is a very strong deceleration cue. So rather than hanging back out here, again, you might come in a little bit, or you can do it from back out here. But basically, I would stay here, strong decel, wait until the dog is no longer looking at this jump. And once they've got the double lined up, or the triple, or whatever that is, I think it's the double, then I would go ahead and head back the other way. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Everyone in the chat can understand that. Here we go, double to the triple into the tunnel, weave, and I think we're going to finish the rest of this course without any issues at all. Okay, so I think this is a very interesting spot because this situation is going to come up a lot for this handler, right? So if they kind of get the concept, then this is not going to be a challenge for them anymore, right? They're going to be able to very confidently see in the walkthrough on a course map, oh, okay, the first turn is the wrong obstacle, the second turn is there, I need to do something special, whether it's a reverse spin, a J turn, a strong deceleration, whether I need to do a front cross to take away the first option, which is wrong. I need to do something more than just slow down, turn, pull my dog, and hope for the best, right? All right.
All right. There's one kind of idea that you made me think of, Sivan, when you were talking about, I think it was when you were talking about when there's like several rear crosses and they're making mistakes on several rear crosses. And that is the idea that you need to, like when you're looking at your runs, you need to take a look at the at where you recover. So a lot of times people will have made 5 mistakes on a run, but really mistakes 3, 4, and 5 are all because of mistakes 1 and 2. And so I kind of don't count those, right? And I kind of skip over those. And this is a good example actually, because if on this particular run, if the handler had intended to be on the inside of this line through their handling, then even this mistake, I would say, is still part of the initial mistake, because now the handler got forced into handling in a way that maybe she didn't even walk. So I think that it's a useful exercise, especially for people who are feeling really down about a run. I've had a lot of people send me a run that they said, like in quotes, was a train wreck. And it is never as bad when I look at it as how they were feeling it was. A lot of times it's kind of compounding mistakes, and really there was only 1 or 2 what I would call real mistakes on the course. So I think that's something that's really helpful for people so that they don't get too discouraged.
Yeah, let me address a couple of points. So someone mentioned she would have her arm extended for anything far away. Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible to teach a dog to respond to our arm cues. The problem is you have to be very, very clear, and the dog has to be able to see your arm, right? So occasionally, especially for smaller dogs, their view is going to be blocked by wings, obstacles, things like that. I think in more advanced coursework, you're also going to lose sight of the handler, or they're going to move to your peripheral vision, or if you use extreme distance, it's a little bit hard to discriminate. But you just want to be very consistent. So if you're going to do that, I generally will have or ask handlers, hey, lift your arm up like really high. And then if you're going to have it low, like don't put your arm up at all. Like just stick your hand out there, but have it very, very low. Like you're luring them by the nose, showing them a treat or something like that. And then you have to be absolutely consistent in your usage, right? But even with that, if you're very, very like high and low arm dependent, my experience has been that there are a lot of problems at the transition points, right? Because you have to raise your hand until your hand gets up there, right? There could be issues, and then as you turn, you're naturally going to move your arms to maintain your balance and running speed and things like that. So it's a little bit tricky. How important are spoken commands in this situation, right? So it's not even, I think, situation based, right? It depends entirely on the handler and the dog, right? Some dogs are much more verbal, some handlers are much more dependent on it. In general, people who do distance work are more dependent on it because physically, whether option A or B is the right answer. It doesn't matter. The handler's like moving in the same direction. They're standing in roughly the same spot. The only thing that's going to be different is the word, right? So I think those are spots where spoken cues are really important, and having them trained to a really high level are important, or is important. Let's see. Could the red jump be done as a wrap? Yes, I believe so, depending on what red jump. If you're talking about this red jump over here, basically, yes. And so wingless jumps, especially when you approach at a slice here, dogs tend to slice it and not wrap it, right? So it depends on the dog. Um, I would not expect in this situation for a dog to do the beautiful kind of wrap where you see dogs do like multi wraps. That's not the kind of jumping arc and path that you're going to see from a dog running at the speed in this situation. And I don't know that it's the one that we do want to see, right? A dog would have to bleed off a tremendous amount of speed that you might not want to do given the angles involved here. It's not where I expected after the triple, but I agree decel would have been so much better. Yeah, the tricky thing about this is there is decel, right? Because you have to turn, you're clearly slowing down and you are turning and now you're moving in the new direction, but sometimes you have to be a little bit more patient. And that's why I generally, as a starting step, and for most people, you never have to advance past this. You would just stop here or wherever you're stopping, and then just kind of face the wall until your dog like comes all the way back towards you. Some dogs will need some remedial training because even if you stop dead face them, they're not coming back to you for reinforcement. They're looking for their reinforcement at the next obstacle, basically. And so that requires some training, some proofing. Okay, someone says I have a 12-inch dog, but I've been accused of running a llama, arm too high, no doubt. And then someone says, I get told often my arm is too loud. I think there was a time when people were down on arm movement, but I really do like arm movement. So
Yeah.
I think between you, me, and Jen, I want to say, I feel like me and Jen use more arm than you. I could be wrong.
Maybe. I think my
I
big thing
almost
about
always have one arm up at all times. And then I did do a lot of high-low for a long time for tunnel contact discriminations when they used to have the tunnels coming up underneath contact. Jen, do you use a lot of like high arm versus low arm?
I do it more out of habit than what I consciously train. So
Yeah.
like I think I did a video feedback on one of my runs where I was sending to the weave poles and it was at AKC finals.
Yeah.
Poles, and I was rear crossing the weaves and my arm was way up here. Like that's not anything I train.
Yeah.
And I do, keep my arm down at my side when I want my dog to come in. So I wouldn't say I train specific arm cues, but it's definitely something that like happens, and I tend to be like fairly animated when I run.
Right.
But it's not like I teach my dogs, hey, if you see my arm
Yeah.
go up high, run 30 feet away from me. It just sort of is
Right.
instinct that if I want him to go, I put it up. And if I want him at my side, I put it down at my side.
Right.
Maybe we do it a little bit intuitively. And as handlers, we always think, oh, the dog's responding to this and that, and my verbal, and my dog's so verbal. But they pick up on a million little things that we do,
Right.
and they find their own cues, and so they probably might give different answers if you interviewed them about what is cueing them. But I think it's fairly intuitive because whenever I see a person who puts up a really strong arm, or am I in the frame here? A high, if they put up like a high arm, and the dog like takes a jump and wraps really tight, I feel like that's weird. So
Yeah.
it must be intuitive
Right.
to my mind that if your arm is really strong and out there, that you're expected to carry a little bit. But I think it's better to use your body motion
I agree.
and
So
deceleration to carry versus like create sharp turns.
So there are two things that I would say about the arms. One is that I think like most cues, right, the more distinct it is, the better it works. So if you run around with your arm up all the time, it's doing nothing but slowing down your running, right? So if you like use it in a few key spots, that's great. But if it's like always up, like it would be better off for you to drop it, run, and have more motion, you know, and let the motion really do it. Oh, there was a question that I wanted to answer up here. And it was about front crosses and timing. And okay, best strategy for when you realize you're too late for a front. And this question I like to answer because I want people to know that you can't always like make something good out of like a mistake that happens on the course. It's not always recoverable. You know, you might be able to save the cue, but like when you realize you're too late on the front, basically, in my opinion, you have two choices, right? You do the front anyway, or you switch to a rear. And there's problems with both of those. And so which one you choose depends on what else is on the course, right? So if you do the front cross anyway, it's going to be a bad front cross. It's going to create a wide turn. It's going to be clunky, right? If there's nothing else out there, you can take the wide turn. You can have the not pretty but clean run, right? But if there is something else out there, then your motion to a late front cross may be telling your dog to go take something else, and you will get an off course. So if there's something out there, you cannot push that front cross because you are telling your dog to take the off course. And in that case, you'd be better off throwing on the brakes and doing the rear. So why don't I say, well, you should always just throw in the rear? Well, because most rear crosses are set up several obstacles before. You can't do a very good rear cross if you're accelerating into it, because you need to let the dog get ahead of you. And so most of the time, if you throw in a rear because you didn't get to the front, what you end up with is a very sharp rear, because you end up not letting your dog get in front of you until they're right up on the jump, and they're crossing right behind them at a 90-degree angle, and they take the jump and they turn with you. And so then you might miss what comes after that jump. So yeah, you're kind of like, there are potential for problems either way you do it at that point. And so that's why I tend to be a little bit more conservative about where I plan to do my front crosses. Like I want to have a pretty good feeling like I'm going to get to that spot, because I know that just on the fly throwing it into a rear is not the answer either. So I want to have a good sense that I can get to the front cross, and if I can't, then I'm going to have planned out a different strategy for that section of the course, rather than trying to force in a bad front cross.
I also think with experience, you'll start to know earlier on course if you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Like it, and the end, like when you're kind of like a new team, like it's not until that moment that you're like not gonna make it, and it's really crunchy and it's really hard. And as Sarah said, now you're too close to the jump to do a good rear, and you slam on the brakes and you get the tight turn. But with experience, you're gonna start to realize like one or two obstacles earlier, like okay, I'm not going to make that. And then you can sort of make the adjustment. Like the course that set out at my building, you will know as the dog jumps 3 whether or not you're going to make the cross that happens down at 5. So like you'll know at 3 what's going to happen based on their level of commitment. And I think with time and experience, I mean, hopefully with time and experience, you're not late that often, but you can start to go, yep, I'm not going to make it, and then begin to make the adjustment a little bit earlier as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah. All right. And I'll just address this comment very quickly. Barbara says she likes Sarah Baker's soft turn cue training. So, of course, for people who don't know, Sarah Baker, 3-time national agility champion for the AKC. I think she's also been a Westminster runner-up. And she works with us, and she does content for our VIP members as well. But Jen, what do you think about this idea of trying to have different cues? And there are many, of course, we already said there are many different ways to cue your dog. Most of it's going to be physical, motion, maybe verbal. Have you ever experimented with verbal cues for maybe doing just a slight turn, a 90-degree turn versus a wrap? Like, how many different cues do you have for turning a dog right now? Or are you more like me, where I won't spoil it. You give yours, and then I'll share mine.
I'll try to give the short answer. I
Mm-hmm.
currently do not have soft turning cues for any of my dogs.
Gotcha. I
will
concur.
I will also add to that
Mhm.
that I consider myself a relatively mobile handler. And
Yeah.
so in general, I don't have a lot of verbals or as many verbals as many people have. I have a choice to like get on the treadmill and work on my fitness to be faster, or go out and train the dog on the skills. So
Mhm.
I go to the gym and work with a trainer twice a week.
Sure.
No, but so I am not, the point in saying this is I am not against them.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply making the statement that I currently do not have them for my dogs. I think you could go in deeper and kind of decide that a little bit of that has to decide with the goals and the direction that you're going to go.
Yep.
If you have a large dog running AKC, you're going to give a soft turning cue on almost every jump. So then are you diluting it? And at that, I mean, if every jump is saying, hey, easy left, easy left, easy left, easy right, and everything's an easy or whatever cue you use, like, how does it then become effective? So I do not have it, but I will also say that it is a point of discussion that I have had with my training buddies very recently. I have a 7-month-old puppy. So on this date, April 25th, I don't have them. Come back in a year and I'll let you know if I do or not and how that's going.
Yeah. They're like, do you need it? Do you not need it? What does it look like? It'd be interesting. I'm definitely going to talk with Sarah about it now. The one time that we did try it, or at least that I tried it for my dogs, was dog walk exits. So, right, you have the running dog walk, and then this was at a time when judges were kind of like, I don't want to say punishing you, but they were very clearly testing your ability to turn on the dog walk. And sometimes you'd have to turn very sharply, like a hairpin turn, basically like a wrap off the dog walk, sometimes into a tunnel, sometimes not. 90 degrees, or a slight turn, or straight. And you, as the handler, would have to be running some atrocious long line where basically you're going to be in the same spot, you're going to be running all out, and it was going to have to be done verbally, right? So I recall, like, Gitchy had like multiple like different cues that we hoped, given in a timely fashion, would help her discriminate on some of those very challenging international style courses. That was several years ago. I think since then, course design has kind of moved away from that internationally, where they're not really doing that. They're very much bigger into straight exits. You're not seeing a need for all of those different options. So for myself personally, I'm more like Jen, like, maybe I don't need that. So basically, I'm just telling my dog to go over, and then it's a combination of body and motion that tells them, and layout of the obstacles, right? The different options out there. For the dog, it's kind of on them to figure out what the next thing is. The only exception I have is the tight wrap. That is a completely different cue from the jumping cue, and I expect them to do the same behavior no matter what I am doing physically, which is to wrap the jump and then come back toward wherever they were running from.
All right. Wow, we hit right at an hour.
Perfect.
I thought this was going to be like 30 minutes. I should know better by now once we start talking about agility. But that is it for this Trial Review Tuesday. And I really want to thank everybody who sent in videos and letting us show everybody your mistakes and talk about them, because it's really instructive. We have a lot of our VIP members who share publicly in the group, and that kind of the whole group learns from it, and we just have I think as a group we have a very healthy relationship to mistakes. we all have, you know, like the right attitude about mistakes and them being just chances to learn and instructive. So thank you very much for submitting your runs. And that is it for tonight's live. If hopefully y'all are on our mailing list, so you get the Wednesday wrap up. Will be out tomorrow, and then also we'll be posting about another live event that we're going to have next week. So that post will be up, you know, sometime here in the next week. We'll be telling you about our next live event. All right, thanks everybody.
Have a good week.